Blog Talk Radio.
My orders came through. My squadron sits after now. Bombing the storage depots at Dacre at 1800 hours. They're coming in from the north, below the radar.
How many have you got?
I can't tell you that. It's classified.
Not really. Hey, it's classified.
I understand we're under martial law as declared by the Speaker last night. I understand we're under martial law as declared by the Speaker last night. I understand we're under martial law as declared by the Speaker last night.
Now vote for approval of H.R. 8791, the Homeland Terrorism Preparedness Bill. Said bill requests emergency response funding up to and including, this section is classified, dollars to prepare for a national level terrorist attack and or attack from classified. Funding for first responder personnel and vehicles would be doubled if said attack leads to more than 80% of national population being affected by classified. This funding shall commence in conjunction with the first attack on classified or the first large-scale outbreak of classified, dependent upon which comes first. Civilian and military units shall be trained in containment and combat of classified, including irradiated classified with possibility of classified airborne, classified flesh-eating, classified, and or all of the above in such event as classified spewing, classified escape are released or otherwise become uncontrollable. Air Force units may also be directed to combat said classified due to their enormous size and otherworldly strength. Should event occur in urban areas, that's classified, far surpassing our darkest nightmares. Should casualties exceed, classified body disposal actions shall be halted and associated resources shall be reallocated to classified underground, classified protected birthing centers. A new Bill of Rights shall be drafted and approved by classified. Having now reviewed the bill, I ask you to please cast your vote.
God. Where are we preparing for? There's been an awakening. Have you felt it? You are listening to Dark Matter Radio with your host, Ronnie. And today, a show beyond our shows is we're going to be taking a look up into the skies. When was the last time you actually looked up into the skies and seen exactly what was going on out there? If you're in your 30s, 40s, or even 50s beyond, you would know and realize that since the 1980s, the beginning of the 1990s, the skies just have never looked the same, and they look totally different than what they did back then. Chemtrails, Solar Engineering, and the Chemtrails, sorry, but this is classified. My God, what are they preparing for? I have no idea. Today we want to talk about geoengineering and chemtrails and give you a brief history about it and get you up to speed exactly what's happening. It's a phenomenon that's going on all around this earth. And as I was researching this, once again, the information that I would say about maybe eight months ago that I found very easily on the internet was very difficult to find. Now everything about chemtrails is conspiracy. Well, it failed to become or stopped becoming a conspiracy when Harvard, NASA, and certain U.S. government officials in the military all admitted to doing geoengineering and spraying chemicals in the air to help the atmosphere. But contrails and chemtrails are two very different things. Chemtrails, which everybody wants to say that chemtrails are, which is not. That's very deceptive. Chemtrails are is the natural reaction of combustion air, and it's regular exhaust coming out of an engine. That's what it is. Water vapor, those kinds of things, right? Carbon dioxide. That's what that is, right? That's chemtrails. Chemtrails are usually, you can find them about anywhere between I think they said 28 to 30,000 feet up in the air is where you usually get the chemtrails. Anything below that, you really don't see airplanes spewing out anything. Chemtrails now is a totally different thing. Chemtrails, again, have been tested by a lot of different types of scientists all over the United States. I'm sure all over the world because they have a UN treaty to this, and we're going to be getting to that in just a second. But in some of the particles that they found in chemtrails were aluminum oxides particles, arsenic, Bacilli and Molds, Barium Salts, Barium Titanates, calcium, Cadmium, Chlorium, deselected human red blood cells were also in there. Crazy. But the main things, a lot of the things they found in there was aluminum, strontium, barium. They also have contributed Morgellons disease to the spraying of this stuff, which is a web-type disease, something that gets into your skin, which is quite disgusting and crazy. It's sprayed out of the jet nozzles or out of the some of the pictures that I looked at, and I have showing here on the Dark Matter Radio site. These sprays aren't actually, a lot of them aren't actually coming out of the engines. They're actually coming out of special nozzles that they have that's on the wing of the jet. Interesting. Some of the cockpit photos that I've seen actually have a chemtrail off and on switch in them. A lot of these planes that are doing the chemtrails are larger planes that fly higher up in the atmosphere, and not really sure if they're military or not. But what I do want to do is give you a slight history of weather modification that was actually looked into from TDC website, the Daily Conversation website, and very interesting when you see and you hear exactly what's going on. Again, it is my belief, and from all the studying that I've done, even though that the majority information that you're getting on the internet, that these chemtrails that are flying over your head are real. They are real. Chemtrails are geoengineering, aerosol loaded with toxic chemicals. And again, they include barium, strontium 90, aluminum, zinc, viruses. They also use chaff. There was a weather report that's on the internet where the guy was giving the weather report, and he says, and he was looking at all these different weather patterns in the sky, and he says that this isn't actually any kind of weather patterns. They're not birds. They're actually chaff that the military is using to help control the weather. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. And the chaff looks like a snow, but is actually a fiber coated with aluminum desiccate. It is mixed in it with some blood cells, plastic, and some paper. And there's a whole lot more chemicals and a lot of these things that they're spraying over our heads. And then you wonder why you're so sick. You wonder why that there's a lot of things that are going on that you just don't understand about your health and your body. It's really, really crazy. So we're going to get into a little bit more of the actual chemtrails, some of the legislation, the UN legislation, and stuff like that that's coming out, that has already come out since the 70s. But first, I want you to hear this brief report about the history of weather modification.
This is the history of human weather modification. During World War II, too many British Air Force pilots were crashing while trying to land in heavy fog so thick, some crews just ditched their planes in the sea and parachuted out rather than landing blind. So scientists came up with a plan to install gasoline pipelines along both sides of the runway and ignite them to create huge rows of flame, which then evaporated suspended fog droplets, allowing the Allied aircraft to locate the airfield and land safely. In 1946, techniques were developed that triggered rain and snowfall in places that wouldn't have gotten any otherwise. This became known as cloud seeding. It works by dispersing dry ice, salt, or silver iodide into clouds to alter their microphysical processes. In the early 60s, the U.S. government began testing cloud seeding on hurricanes to learn if it was possible to weaken them. Rocket canisters of silver iodide were dropped from aircraft into the storm's eye, and gun-like devices mounted on the wings also sprayed the stuff onto the clouds. Initially, the tests seemed to work. Wind speeds were cut, and in some cases, the hurricane eye walls even fell apart. But as observational technology improved and more controls were carried out, the hypothesis was invalidated, and the program was canceled. In its desperation to win the Vietnam War, the Americans turned to weather modification to make it harder for the enemy to move throughout the region by inducing heavy rainfall to muddy or destroy their dirt roads and trails. 47,000 canisters of silver iodide were dropped over North and South Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. Some areas supposedly saw their monsoon period extended by up to 45 days, but just 2 days after the New York Times exposed the program, it was discontinued. Operation Popeye caused the USSR and U.S. to negotiate a ban on the military use of offensive weather modification techniques in 1977. But the treaty didn't stop countries from using cloud seeding against themselves, as the Soviet Union did in 1986 when the Chernobyl nuclear disaster sent fallout into the sky. Civilians on the ground and the Russian pilots who carried out the mission have confirmed that aircraft flew overhead, ejecting a substance into the clouds. This resulted in heavy, black-colored radioactive rain to fall in Belarus instead of onto the Soviet capital, Moscow. Today, 37 countries are operating weather modification programs to enhance rainfall or suppress hail, or both. But nobody does it quite like the Chinese, who established the Bureau of Weather Modification in the 1980s that's now a 37,000 people strong sort of weather national guard, ready at a moment's notice to operate the more than 4,000 rocket launchers, 7,000 anti-aircraft guns, and 30 aircraft to trigger downpours in drier areas that really need the rain. The Bureau's highest profile operation was keeping Beijing's Bird's Nest Stadium dry during the opening ceremony of the 2008 Olympics. The following year, the Bureau dropped 186 doses of silver iodide into a cold front to bring drought-stricken Beijing its earliest snowfall since 1987. A Swiss company took advantage of the United Arab Emirates' desperation to bring rain to its arid lands by building 10-meter-tall electrical towers that produce negatively charged ions that, according to the company, supercharges the formation of rain clouds. But a former chairman at NOAA isn't buying it, saying, quote, "This method is inherently incapable of producing clouds out of thin air," end quote. The thing about weather modification is that it's hard to prove it works. But based on the results we've seen and the number of countries still doing it, man's effort to control precipitation isn't stopping anytime soon, even though we have little understanding of the unintended consequences. If this video opened your eyes to the reality of weather modification as much as it did mine, like it and help it spread. And as usual, thanks for watching.
Weather modification, they're at its best. As you can see right now, now that we have that under our belts, we see that it's actually real and that it is actually going on. So you cannot debunk it and say that this is not really happening, that they haven't been doing it. They've been doing this since maybe even before the 1950s. So weather modification and the use of spraying chemicals and seeding clouds are very real and very important for us to understand what is happening to us. Now, here in the United States, spraying chemicals, chemtrail spraying, is illegal under U.S. law, under United States law. The United States Legal Code, U.S. House Representative Title 50, Chapter 32, Section 1520A, states this: the restriction on use of human subjects for testing of chemical or biological agents. It prohibits the activities of the Secretary of Defense and may not conduct directly or by contract any, and the reason why they put that contract in is because a lot of things that the United States does or military people do in order for them to get out of it, be responsible for anything, they contract. They bring in contractors, what they call contractors. And these contractors go in there and they do all the dirty work, the things that it's not politically or military responsible for somebody to do. So they do all the dirty work. So this is the reason why they put that word in their contract. So this is a very serious document. It goes on to say the prohibited activities are any test or experiment involving the use of chemical agents or biological agents on civil populations or any other testing or chemical agent or biological agent on human subjects. Now, this is the kicker because Part B, they have an exception. And the exception is this: subject to subsequences, C and E. The section that prohibits the Section A, we're getting really legal here, of the section does not apply. So this does not apply to what they just got finished saying. To any test or experiment carried out for any of the following purposes. 1, any purpose that is directly related to the protection against toxic chemicals or biological weapons and agents. 2, any law enforcement purpose, including any purpose related to riot control. Can you believe that? They are allowed to spray all kinds of chemicals on you if there is a riot or you're out there protesting or something like that. And then it goes, informed consent required. The Secretary of Defense may conduct a test or experiment described in Section B of this section only if informed consent to the testing was obtained from the human subject in advance for testing on that subject. So then they have down here biological agent defined. In this section, the term biological agent means microorganism, including bacteria, viruses, fungi, rickeleptics, whatever that is, or protozoa, pathogens, or infectious substances, and any naturally occurring bioengineered or synthesized component of any such microorganism, pathogen, and or infectious subjects, whether it is origin or method of production, that is capable of causing 1, death, disease, or other biological malfunction in the human and animal, a plant, or other living organisms. It goes on to say deterioration of food, water, equipment, supplies, or materials of any kind, or deleterious alterations of the environment. Now, when you hear all these things and hear all these words, just you got to remember something. That they're mentioning all of these things because all of these things are possible and they can do it. they have done it. And a group of people come together and say that this is very dangerous. We need to really pass something to say that this should not be done on our population. But of course, there's always an exception if they're doing it for the public good, to help them from other diseases or anything else that might be able to control their situation. So this is a serious thing. We established that chemtrails are different from contrails. Contrails is mainly the evaporation or condensation coming from an engine. Chemtrails are something totally different. And when you start looking at chemtrails, you start talking about geoengineering, the stuff that they spray out of the back ends of the planes, that big white puffy stuff that stays up in the sky for quite some time, that may contain aluminum, cerium, bermium. It's linked to Magellan's disease and a lot more stuff that's coming out of there. So another thing is that when you start seeing them doing the crisscrossing in the skies, just take a look up. These planes are running patterns over you, and they're crisscrossing. So on a completely clear day, it'll take a matter of maybe hours before that day becomes very cloudy, and then a weather pattern might even develop. So in today's day and age, we used to have days at a time as to where there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Today, you'll be hard pressed to ever find any day without something up there in the sky. And then not only that, but now the weather people have come up with a lot of different things detailing the different type of cloud formation and weather formations, right? So they got a lot of new weather and cloud formations that have popped up over the past 5 or 10 years that wasn't on the books before. And that is extremely interesting. Extremely interesting. And some say that they're doing this because they're trying to control environmental factors to prevent global warming, climate control, trying to help the defects of climate change. Some are saying that they're doing that because some of the people over there at Harvard, I believe it was, and some of the people in the military and NASA have said that spraying this stuff worldwide, on a worldwide basis, will be a great benefit and help because it would help absorb the heat in the atmosphere and help block the sun to try to reduce the temperatures. Well, I want to bring up this quick fact that back in the 70s, they said that we were on our way to a mini ice age. Anywhere from 30 or 40 years, 50 years from that time period, which we will be going into right now. Think about that. You had scientists back in the 70s saying that we're heading in towards a mini ice age. And now, with all the spraying and all the stuff that's going up on the air, it seems as though that the weather is just so unpredictable. You don't know whether or not it's going to be cold or snowing. I mean, it's April 7th, April 9th, April 7th, I think it is today. And here in Canada, where I am right now, in the Calgary area, it is minus 12 and snowing outside. So we had a whole situation going on there in California where they went through the largest drought, California, Oregon, Washington, state of Washington, all of our farm belts, Colorado, down there, Arizona. We had Texas as well, Nevada. The whole entire area went through one of the most serious droughts. And being right off the ocean, at some points, it didn't rain for months. How is that even possible? Some people are suspecting that they were doing a lot of geoengineering and spraying and seeding of the clouds to make sure that that didn't happen over there, that the rain didn't come. And they also brought in HAARP, which will have a whole entire show on HAARP in itself. And that's a high resonancy frequency that bounces its power off the ionosphere. And they started studying that way back in the 40s and 50s. In fact, it was Nicholas Tesla, who was born in the 1800s, who actually found out about a lot of the different types of things that are in the ionosphere, how much energy is all around us, and how we can just draw electrical energy right out of the air. And that all goes hand in hand because our world and the things that they tell us are not what it seems to be. Not what it seems to be. And when you talk about all this geoengineering, you know it was very serious because back in '76, December 10th, a convention on the prohibition of military and any other hostile use of environmental modification techniques was brought up and discussed. And it was adopted by resolution 31/70 of the United Nations General Assembly on December 10, 1976. The convention was opened for signature at the Geneva on May 18th, 1977. So back then they knew. So let me just go over that a little bit with you because it's important for us to understand how all the nations of the world back in 77 began to start realizing, actually 76 began to start realizing how dangerous these things were and how they needed a treaty amongst themselves in order for this stuff to be governed. United Nations General Assembly Resolution 3172 sees the official records of the General Assembly, the 31st session. And it was ratified and signed, I believe, on January 1st, 1977. World Amendments and Disarmament, as it was called, the laws of armed conflicts. The state parties to this convention, guided by the interest of consolidating peace and wish to contribute to the cause of halting the arms race and of bringing about a general and complete disarmament under the strict effectiveness international control of saving mankind from the danger of using new means of warfare. And I go back, new means of warfare. And I go back to that guy that you heard in the beginning, that congressman, when he was constantly saying, classified. The whole entire document, you couldn't really, I mean, from blips and services that you got from it, glimpses that you got from that document that he was reading, man, there's some hellified stuff that's on its way that's here. That's here. And that they're preparing for. What in the world are they preparing for? Is the question. What are they preparing for? This is insane when you start talking about more than 80% of the population classified, being affected by classified, and if more than a certain amount of population becomes deceased because of classified, interment preparations will be conducted by classified, approved by classified. To prepare us for the hell. They actually use, I believe, that word, the hell that is going to be before us from classified. they're preparing to have a whole new Bill of Rights to be drawn up by a classified group of people that are in the wings waiting right now for whatever is going to be befalling on us. I'm telling you, this is a cry and a warning to everyone in this world. We got some hell coming down on us, and from the documents that I'm reading and from the things that I just showed you just on this show, it is going to be hell on earth. And I don't believe they're talking about some comet. I don't believe that they're talking about some planet that's coming into our solar system. Not by the things that I'm reading, by the things that I'm seeing. This is insane. Now, this UN convention that was held back in between 76 and 77 had 3 articles, 4 articles, 5 articles, 7 articles. It's a pretty heavy document. And it states that each party to this convention undertakes to any measures it considers necessary in accordance with constitutional processes to prohibit and prevent any activity in violation of the provisions of the convention anywhere under the jurisdiction and control. So it is quite serious that they're passing, or they have already passed, this bill some time ago. And that any state party to the convention may propose amendments to the convention. The text of any proposed amendment shall be submitted to the depository, who shall promptly circulate it to all state parties. But the key here is that the convention of this prohibition of military on any other hostile use of environmental modification techniques. That's what it is. Now, why would they pass that? When everybody on the internet and a lot of people on YouTube, a lot of these articles that I'm reading are calling it a conspiracy. Why are they so hell-bent in coming out and calling this a conspiracy when they're passing UN resolutions more than 30 years ago on this very subject? Where the United States outlawed this type of practice to be done on its own people, but with exceptions, which means that they can do it. And in 2005, there was a Senate bill in the Congress, 109th Congress, was introduced in 2005, 2006, Weather Modification Research and Development Policy Authorization Act of 2005. A bill was to establish a Weather Modification Operations and Research Board, and for other purposes. I mean, how vague can you get? For other purposes? Other purposes like what? Keeping us alive? Other purposes like what? Experimenting on all of us? Weather modification and research. So we know that from the history of weather modification, this stuff is real. This is no joke. It's happening. And they're spraying this stuff on us day and night. Day and night. And you see that open air chemtrails, spraying operations are live and well in California, all 50 states, and in all NATO countries. An independent analysis of the chemtrails fallout has identified many toxic chemicals including, and I'm going to do this again, arsenic, Bacilli and Molds, Barium Salts, Barium Titanates, Cadmium, Calcium, Chromium. Then you also have deselected human red blood cells. You also have lead that was found in there, mercury, menthol aluminum, mold spores, mycoplasma, nano aluminum, coated fiberglass, nitrogen terafluoride, known as chaff. And again, that chaff, a lot of times when it comes down like it's a web, but it's actually a fiber. Some of the stuff that they're spraying, they think that it's causing Morgellons disease. There's some radioactive selenium, radioactive thorium, and even just selenium is in there. Yeah, that was right. Selenium is in there. But this is serious stuff, people. This is serious stuff. And, you know, some people say that they're spraying it because they don't really want you to see what's going on with the sun, what's going on out there in the sky. Some people are saying that because they have this nano and nanite technology that they're actually spraying it, and these things are actually going into our cells. And as they're putting up all these 5G towers, they're formulating some sort of a death grid where they can control our bodies through frequencies, our minds through frequencies. See, they did something like that during the first Gulf War, if you remember. When they went in there and they attacked Iraq, and when they attacked them, they did some sort of a sonic sound wave type situation that went over there and messed up with their mental abilities, and nobody on that area could fight at all. They were surrendering by the thousands, crying, telling them to help me. There wasn't even a fight. And those that could fight didn't know how. They were running for their lives. They're thinking that was a heart type situation that they threw up on them. We're living in some very dangerous and interesting times. And we're going to have to all really think about what's going on with humanity. I mean, there's so many different types of things that are going on there right now that this is just really too scary to think about. And a lot of people don't. They run right away from this conversation. And the best way for them to be able to deal with it is to call you crazy, a conspiracy theorist, because a lot of the stuff that's happening is very much well out of your control. You can't control it. So as we move forward in everything that we're doing in our lives, no matter where you are, if you're in Russia, Germany, Iraq, China, India, Australia, getting reports that it's happening everywhere. We must check ourselves, check our government, and make sure that whatever is going on is brought out to light and is dealt with promptly. Because none of this of what's going on right now, because a lot of it's hidden, shrouded in secrecy. They don't want you to know. Pretty scary. Pretty scary when you think about it. And this is why Dark Matter Radio was here, to help look at these things. Withheld from the general circulation for reasons of national security. What are they hiding? In preparation for what? Listening to speakers, researchers, and a lot of urban areas, you know, we're all under attack. Hell's coming.
Mr. Speaker, I understand we're under martial laws declared by the Speaker last night. Mr. Speaker, I understand we're under martial laws declared by the Speaker last night. Mr. Speaker, I understand we're under martial laws declared by the Speaker last night.
Now vote for approval of H.R. 8791, the Homeland Terrorism Preparedness Bill. Said bill requests emergency response funding up to and including, this section is classified.
Classified.
Dollars to prepare for a national level terrorist attack and or attack from classified.
Classified.
Funding for first responder personnel and vehicles would be doubled if said attack leads to more than 80% of national population
80%.
being affected by classified.
Affected by
This funding shall commence in conjunction with the first attack on classified.
first attack on.
The first large-scale outbreak of classified, dependent upon which comes first. Civilian and military units shall be trained in containment and combat of classified.
What are they fighting against?
Irradiated classified, with possibility of classified airborne, classified flesh-eating, classified, and or all of the above in such event as classified spewing, classified escape, are released or otherwise become uncontrollable.
What are they
Air Force
doing?
units may also be directed to combat said classified due to their enormous size and otherworldly strength.
Enormous size
Occur in urban areas.
and enormous strength.
Jesus.
What are they doing?
That's classified, far surpassing our darkest nightmares. Should casualties exceed classified body disposal actions, shall be halted and associated resources shall be reallocated to classified underground, classified protected birthing centers.
Birthing
Bill
centers.
of Rights shall be drafted and approved by classified. Having now reviewed the bill, I ask you to please.
There's been an awakening. Have you felt it? You are listening to Dark Matter Radio with your host, Ronnie.